another tutorial video. For this tutorial we're going to be using Glacier paste and Nuvo drops to create a cool background, along with some ink pads from Nuvo as well, and then we're also going to be using the dyes and elements from Tonic Craft Kit number 64 to create our focal elements and stuff for this card as well. So because this is going with Tonic Craft Kit 64, I thought I'd give you a quick rundown of everything that you're going to get in that kit. So first of all, you're going to get a full pot of a Glacier paste. This is a beautiful white colour. You're going to get a full Nuvo drop as well in silver lining. You're going to get a mini ink blending tool with 4 spare replacement blending sponges as well, in case you've never tried one before. You're also going to get a full pack of Nuvo hybrid ink pads. You're either going to get Merry and Bright, which is what I've got, or you're going to get the Principal inks, which is the Black Shadow, Metro Grey, and then the Clear Mark ink pads as well. So you're going to get one version of those. You've also got a beautiful selection of coloured cardstock in specialty glitter cardstocks. You've got their 300 GSM, Vellum, frosted mirror card, the double-sided pearlescent card, normal mirror card, and some of their texture craft perfect. And this colour scheme goes extremely well with the beautiful die set that is in this month's craft kit, which is a telephone box. And I was thinking, oh, this is a box shaped like a telephone, like the previous one that Tonic came out with, but no, this is an actual London telephone box, which is so cool, and it looks absolutely fantastic when it is made up into a 3-dimensional box. Look how realistic it looks, and you can open the door on it. I just pushed that in when I picked it up, but you can open the door on the telephone box, and you can also create a lock mechanism for it as well, and you can also take the lid off too. So if you'd rather not have the door opening, depending on what gift you're putting inside it, you can just use 4 of the side panels rather than 3 of the side and 1 of the door panels, and you can just have it as a box that opens on the top of it as well. But I think this box is fantastic, and check out my unboxing video, which should have been up yesterday on my channel, to see more detail of the bits and pieces that are involved in creating this. I'm not going to do a construction, but I probably will show you all the bits and pieces that's involved and how to create it, because I actually went over the top on mine and doubled up panels to make it really sturdy and strong, because I had made it out of the textured Craft Perfect cardstock and I wanted it to be a really nice, sturdy, strong box. And there will also be some card ideas in my unboxing video as well. But this is the die set that creates that beautiful telephone box. You get the instructions in here as well, which are really easy to follow and gives you exactly what you need, how many pieces you need of everything, so you can get going as soon as you get your kit. You've got all of the cardstock in there and you can just get die cutting all the bits and pieces that you're going to need to create your telephone box. But as usual, you don't have to just create a 3-dimensional telephone box. You can just use the panels to put a telephone on your card, which is what we're going to be doing in this tutorial video once we've done the tutorial part, which is kind of like the background portion of the card. And also in the kit you also get a stamp set as well. So you've got beautiful florals, these vines, a crown, and then 3 different sentiments that you can use on the telephone box as well. You can either use stamp sentiments or die cut sentiments for your telephone box. For the tutorial card we are going to use a die cut sentiment. But I'll just move all of this stuff out of the way, and then I'll come back and show you what card we're going to be creating in this video. Okay, so this is the card that we're going to create in this tutorial video. It's kind of difficult to see the background. There you go, you can kind of catch it there. Because I've used the marble statue ink, which is the one I got in my Merry and Bright set, it's really subtle in the background where I've put the circles. However, if you get the Principal ink set, you'll get the Metro Grey, which would be slightly more of a prominent kind of design if you were going to recreate this with the items that you get in your kit, and if you get that set of ink pads rather than Merry and Bright ones. But what we're doing in this background is we're going to create circle designs using the ink blending tool and the ink, and then we're going to use some Glacier paste to draw random circles around those circular designs, and then we're also going to use some of the Nuvo drops as well with a fine tip applicator on them to accent them even further. So, to start off with for this background, let's do a little bit of ink blending. I've got one dry so that I don't have to wait for everything to dry before we can finish assembling the card. But first of all, we want to take our marble statue ink pad. We also want to get one of our sponges, in the kit, I think it says you're getting 1 ink blending tool and 4 replacement sponges, so I'm not sure if it means you get 1 on the tool and then 4 extras, or whether you're just getting 4, because I got 1 on the tool and then 4 extras, which would mean you'd have 1 for each of your 3 ink pads in the set, 1 for Glacier paste, and you could also have 1 for your Nuvo drops if you wanted to use them in that fashion as well, because it is possible to use them in that way. But I'm just putting 1 on here, which I have already used with the grey, but it's such a light grey it hardly looks like I've used anything on it. And we're just going to load up our sponge with the grey ink and then press down and twist to get a circle. Now I'm really sorry it's so light on the camera. It's really difficult for you to see because it is such a light colour. Maybe, do I have my little Metro Grey one out here? Not here, but I've got it over here. Okay, let me use Metro Grey just for this tutorial so that you can see it a little bit better. So if you are getting the principal ink set of ink pads, then you will get this colour as your grey in that. And let's try with this. It's going to be more prominent. Yeah, there we go. So you can see that better. I think I do prefer the subtler look, but you can definitely like tap off some of this first and then twist it on there to get a subtler kind of effect if you're going to use the Metro Grey. But for this tutorial, it's actually better that I use this colour so that you can actually see what I'm doing more as well. But it kind of just depends on what background you're going for, because I kind of feel like this sort of background could be wintry, but it could also be indicative of London, like a bit of smog in the air as well. It kind of gives that kind of background, or it could be a sort of blurred background of people walking down the street or something behind the telephone box. So, you know, there's different ways of sort of using this as a background. It doesn't have to be behind a telephone box either. It can be any kind of background. I just wanted to show you some way of using your ink pads, your drops and your Glacier paste in one kind of background as well. So I think maybe one more little piece up there, and then that should do for our circles all over the background. So that's the ink blending portion. Then we want to use some Glacier paste. So this is the Winter White, that's the white colour of it, and it's the pure white Glacier paste, which is so useful for all sorts of different applications. So actually, before we do the next part onto this background, next thing I want to show you is how to add Glacier paste to your vellum. You're actually getting 2 sheets of vellum in the kit so that you can add vellum frosted windows to your phone box, but I thought, wouldn't it be nice to add a little bit of the Glacier paste on there as well? And it's so easy to do. The only trouble is vellum likes to curl when it gets any sort of moisture on it, so it will be curly, but you'll see later on we can easily stick our window panel to it and get it to stick nicely, but it will curl up when you do it. So I've got another piece of the vellum here. I'll just trim it down a bit smaller because you would probably only be doing that piece to be a window, so I might as well show you how to do it on a smaller piece. Then what I was doing is I was taking a dedicated sponge, and I did this a couple of days ago, and look, the sponge is still squishy, so you can wash this out to make it be even more reusable, or with the Glacier paste it does seem to stay quite nice and supple still after you've used it with the paste in there. It doesn't dry rock solid like acrylic paint or something might do, and you just want to swirl some of your paste onto the ink blending tool and then wipe it across your vellum, and you can put as much or as little on as you want to. You can kind of see the vellum wanting to curl already, but you can go as heavy-handed or as light-handed depending on what look you're kind of going for, and then you can just flip it around. It dries pretty quickly when you're using it so thinly, and then you can just get the other half of the vellum done as well. So that is how you add your Glacier paste to your vellum, and then you get this beautiful result, whether you want to use it with your telephone box or for like a wintry scene or something. You know, you could use this, maybe you're doing a wintry scene that's got a window in it and you're looking from the inside of the house to the outside and you want like a frosted looking window. All sorts of different ways you might want to use this. It could be like an overlay on a card. It could even be you know, instead of acetate on a shaker card as well if you want to. So that is how you add your Glacier paste to your vellum. Then the next step for this project, I probably don't need as much of that out actually, so I'm going to put some away so we're not going to waste anything. So the good thing is about Glacier paste, if you haven't added any water to it or had it out on your desk for too long, you can just put it back in the container, which is nice. So now we are going to add water to this to create a watercolour medium that we can go around these circles with and also do a little bit of splattering with. So we're just going to add a bit of water onto there, and then I do find swirling it around with a palette knife just saves the life of your paintbrushes. You know, you're not going to sort of get it all caught up in the ferrule of the brush then. You can just move it around nicely with a palette knife. Any kind of palette knife that you have, doesn't have to be a metal one, it can be a plastic one, it can be an old gift card or credit card or something as well. So now we've got it into a nice sort of watercolour paint kind of consistency. We can take a small paintbrush and pick some of that up, load the bristles up, and then we're just going to go in a rough circle around those circles that we've already added onto there with our ink. And it doesn't have to match it perfectly. I find if you hold the brush further up, like instantly it makes you do the circles much more looser, and it gives more of like a painterly kind of effect. So just going around, doing random circles, just to sort of like highlight those circles, but also filling in a bit more of the background as well. You can go further out than the actual ink blended circles. So we've now got this, which will dry and become even more shimmery. And then as we've got this out here, we might as well go for the splatter, because I just think it adds to a background nicely. So we can just add a little bit of that splatter on. And then we do want to clean up our paintbrush before we move on to the next bit, so that we're not going to get any of that Glacier paste drying in the ferrule of the brush. So I tend to just squirt some extra water out onto my desk and just roll the brush around in it. But if you've got a pot of water, that's even better. You can swish it around in there just to get the majority of it out of the bristle of the brush, and then just use a bit of kitchen roll to dry it off. So the next part to this background, you still can't really see the full effect of it, can you? But when I tilt it in the light, you can still see it. I wanted to add some Nuvo drops to this. Now you could definitely just go straight from your bottle and squeeze out your Nuvo drops. Because this is just like an extra one, let's just show you the difference on this. So you could definitely shake your Nuvo drop down to the bottom and go straight from the bottle. The background is a little bit wet, so they're going to mix a little bit, but you would get this kind of effect. Slightly more blobby, you're probably going to use a little bit more of your drops. However, if you have some of the precision tip nozzles, not only are they fantastic for putting on your Nuvo Deluxe adhesive, they fit perfectly onto the screw thread, whether you have the original 60ml bottle or the new 120ml bottle, I think they will fit perfectly onto the screw thread of that. They also fit perfectly onto the screw thread of your Nuvo Drop bottles, so you can put one on here. I had a duplicate of the silver lining, but all you do is you take the normal lid off and you just pop this off to the side like that. You can discard this and then you can screw your new top onto there, and then you've got a fine tip nozzled Nuvo drop. I've done this with my favourite colours of Nuvo drops, and I just added this silver one to that sort of collection because we had the silver one in this kit, and I thought actually a silver metallic is probably the metallic that I would reach for the most, but if you could stretch to them, you could have them for your gold and bronze as well, maybe, if you want to have them all in a fine tip applicator. But having this on here, it just means that you can do some finer applications of it. So you can just, again, shake it down to the nozzle of the bottle, and then you can draw with that, and it just gives a finer kind of result. And I've done this on one of my other cards that I will show you in the unboxing video of the Tonic Craft Kit, and I can actually just show you it now as well to show you what I mean. But that is the difference between just using it directly from the bottle or putting a fine tip applicator on there. You're using way less product, it's going to dry much quicker, it's flatter, and it goes more into the background. I love this look though, so don't think that you have to have the fine tip nozzle. I just wanted to show you the difference between them. In the kit you're just going to get your normal bottle, which you can definitely use to do this with, but if you preferred that finer look, then one of those fine tip precision nozzles is going to be perfect to add on to whatever drop that you tend to use the most for, you know, that kind of a thing. So you can do that when you've got that fine tip on there. And also this was the other card that I did, where I turned the window of the telephone box into a stencil, used the inks to stencil with, and then I actually used that fine tip nozzle on the drops to create patterns and texture. It reminds me, in the silver, it really reminds me of that like faux leading kind of stuff that you would get and you could like flood with glass paints and stuff. It really looks like that, so maybe you have some of that as well that you could use for this kind of thing too. So but yeah, I just thought I'd show you that, but you'll see that in more detail, and I might do a little demo of that in the unboxing video too. But that is the background for this tutorial of this card, and I've got a dried one here ready, and I've got my card blank ready as well. I won't stick it onto the card blank just yet. We will go on to the actual phone box first. So to create this phone box to use on a card, these are the pieces that I have cut out. So I've cut the door panel, which actually goes up this way. I've got a piece of the black glitter card from the kit because I want to put that inside the phone box. So when you open the phone box, there's this beautiful black glitter card in there. That could be a photograph. Maybe you've had a trip up to London and you wanted to say, just to say how much I enjoyed our trip, and you could put a photograph of you and whoever you went with inside the telephone box as well. Then I've also cut this window piece here, which you can actually use. There are two, well, there's an extra panel die in there that allows you to create a panel to go behind the cut windows, but you can also just line it up over the top of one of the doors that you've cut out, and then you can have the perfect piece to add some extra decorative detail on top of your windows or doors. On the 3D one, I did it with the mirror card because I thought that would look really, really lovely. So I've done that for this one as well. I've also cut the top of the telephone box like this from a piece of the red card again. I have stamped onto these as well, which I'll tell you about in a second. Also die cut from the red glitter card, the solid little crown piece, plus the detailed crown from black, so they'll stand out nicely on top of each other. Then I've also cut, just to say, as the sentiment, just into the piece of white card, and I'll show you how to trim this out, and we're going to mount it onto a piece of black glitter card and then onto a piece of red mirror card to make it stand out at the top of the telephone box. Then I've also just cut a random strip of black to act as the bottom of the telephone box as well. And don't forget, we've also got our piece of vellum covered in Glacier paste to go behind the windows too. Now, one reason why I have cut this like this is so that I can stick that onto there like so, trim around the edges, and then stick this on top of here. So then from the inside, when you open the card up, you are left with the neat, just the gridding on there, and you can't see the vellum stuck onto the back of here. And the same with the telephone box that I made three-dimensional. I did the same thing there as well, so it looks really nice from the inside of the box too. Because I feel like with the telephone box, you're probably going to want to maybe leave the door open and have somebody inside there as a cool little decoration, even like a Clark Kent figure or something you could have inside there for anybody who loves Superman. But anyway, let's get back to how I kind of turned this three-dimensional telephone box into something to put on the card. Now, the telephone box opens like this, which I think is the actual way that a telephone box would open. However, in my brain, I would always want a door on a card to open the opposite way. So, because we're using this not in the 3D fashion, there's nothing to stop us turning the door the other way around and having it open the other way. So I'm just going to show you how I adapted it to do that, and also show you how to get this score line here to fold nice and straight to have the door opening. I find the glide folder is fantastic, but if you just have the card creaser or any bone folder, you could use the edge of that, or even a ruler actually as well. You could use the edge of a ruler, but I just had this to hand the first time I made one. So you want to line that straight edge up with your score line, and then just carefully prise the door up and push that final edge against your glide folder, and you're going to get that nice crisp edge folded perfectly. It's just difficult because this little edge is so tiny, but that's the kind of the way it has to be to make it look really good when it's put together. But once you've got that started in a nice straight fashion, you can just press that down and really get a good fold on that, so it'll open really nicely on the front of your card. And then you can just ease it back down again to be flat, but you've got that nice opening sort of mechanism, and when we stick it down it'll hold the frame down better, so the door will open and close nicely as well. But how this telephone box works is it's supposed to go this way up, and this flap or this tab here sticks it to the base of the telephone box, and this is partly where this top piece will go to create that lid mechanism of the box. So that's the top piece will sort of come down on top of there to create the lid mechanism. But if I want this door opening the other way, I'm going to have to change this. So I want to then put that lid piece up there instead, rather than being on this large piece down here. So to make this look more like the actual top of the box rather than, or the top of the telephone box rather than the three-dimensional box, you want to cut off that glue tab. So I'm just going to snip that off, and then that will easily be able to stick on top of there, and then that gives you the top of your telephone box. But this piece is then too wide at the bottom, so this is where this black piece comes in handy. When you make the three-dimensional one, you have a die that creates this base platform here, but for this one I just used my trimmer to cut a piece that was the same kind of width as that, which is about 5 or 6 millimeters, and then we're literally just going to stick that onto there, about the same position up from the bottom as on the three-dimensional box, so that we can create the bottom of our telephone box, and it's not going to look weird like there's too big of a step up into it because of the way we flip the panel round. So we can stick that onto there, and then we want to trim off the bottom to make that flush, and that's going to be the flush bottom edge to the card as well. And then we want to trim off these side pieces, and it probably sticks out about, on that one I've done about 2 or 3 millimeters, but this one, well, we'll do about the same, 2 or 3 millimeters looks quite sort of right for the proportions. So that is then the base of your telephone box. So when you're going to put this on the card, it now looks like a proper telephone box, and then when we add this on the top, we're going to get that design, or that the top domed portion of the box on there as well. Now, stamping wise on this, I used the stamp from the kit, the gorgeous flourishy one. I used it twice on the bottom portions and once on the top, and I did originally stamp all of my pieces for the three-dimensional one and the ones I cut for the card with the sliced strawberry that came in my Merry and Bright set of ink pads. However, it showed up initially, and then as it dried back it sort of disappeared, so I did go through my stash and pick out the rich rosewood, which worked really nicely with the Chilli red cardstock that was in the kit. However, if you did have the principal set of inks in your kit, the Metro Grey would give probably a similar kind of effect to this, because this does look a little bit more on the grey side once it's dried on there, but any of your dark red inks from your stash would look perfect for this kind of thing, so you can use anything you want. But that is how I turned this three-dimensional telephone box with a door that opens from left to right into a 2D telephone box where the door opens from right to left. I just felt like it looked better on a card opening that way. Maybe it's just because I'm right-handed. Maybe if you're left-handed you feel like it looked better the original way round. But I just decided to do that for my card. So once you've got that part done, we now want to move on to the window portion. So how we're going to add our window over the top of this bit. So, as I said before, it curls a lot. So the way I was getting around this and making it much easier to stick our glitter card sort of window panel onto it, just take a couple of bits of washi tape and stick it top and bottom, and then we can easily glue this little panel onto there. So we'll just put a little bit of adhesive on the back of all of the areas. We want to make sure it's nicely stuck across everywhere. So go across all of these little crisscross bits on the window panes as well. And then place this down, press it down really nicely, so we're going to get good contact with that vellum, and having that washi tape really helps keep it flat, so you're not going to get like buckled vellum behind it. It's going to be nice and flat and flush onto there. Whilst we're sticking stuff, we might as well stick this little crown onto there as well. So we can pick that up and just stick that onto there. I love this little crown motif. You could use that for other sort of bits and pieces, like maybe to do with postage stamps, and if you had the post box, you know, well, actually it probably was like 2.5 years ago now, Tonic brought out a hexagonal post box, like a pillar box kind of post box. And you could also use this on that kind of thing as well, because I'm sure they do have the little crown symbol on them as well. But yeah, you can definitely mix and match these. If you did have that post box from a few years ago, it would work really nicely with this telephone box. They wouldn't quite be in scale to each other. I think the post box was bigger than the telephone box, but it would be a cool kind of extra set. There's probably bits and pieces that could cross over between them that would be nice. So once that is stuck nicely, we'll just trim off all of that excess that's around the edge of this. And then we can stick this panel straight over the top. And because we've used vellum, we'll be able to see when we've got it right. You can see there, if it's off, you can see the panels or the panes of the glass. But if you get it in the right position, you shouldn't be able to see those. So again, we'll just put adhesive right on the back of this, just around where the sort of glitter card is, and just go across all of those pieces because we want it to be nicely stuck on there. And then we can tap off some of that excess again and then just line it up on here. If you can't quite see, you can hold it up to the light, and then that really helps you get it in the perfect position as well. Or you can try holding it onto different coloured surfaces. Sometimes a white or a black surface will show you differently, you know, how it's lined up on there. But there we go, we've got that gorgeous glitter card version onto there with our vellum, with our Glacier paste onto it as our windows. But on the three-dimensional one that I did, this is actually the Lunar Silver Pearlescent card that comes in the kit, and I think this looks absolutely perfect for creating that kind of telephone box look, because it really does look like, you know, just the light bouncing off of the glass. It doesn't look like, you know, if you do it black it might look a little bit too harsh, but that Lunar Silver looks perfect. So if you don't want anybody to be able to see inside the telephone box, the Lunar Silver is perfect. But if you do want to be able to see a little bit through it, then you can also use the Glacier paste on the vellum, or just the vellum as well, and you can see, you can actually see a little bit through that rather than the pearlescent cardstock. So that is what we've got so far for our telephone box. Then I reckon we want to stick the top of our telephone box on here. So I'm going to use some 1mm foam tape for this, I think. Maybe if we try and like cover this and then use a tiny bit at the top, trim off those two little overhanging pieces there. And then we can stick this onto that bit there. I'm just going to line up this edge piece with the score line that's there, that's supposed to be the glue tab to stick the box to the base. And then we've got our whole telephone box then. Then I think I want to stick the black glitter card on the back. So we want this, I've almost cut that to a perfect size actually, it's just a tiny bit too wide down there. But we want to stick that just behind the door so that it's going to be on the frame, and then the door will be able to open and reveal the glitter card there. So I'm just going to use a tiny bit of glue just around the edge here. And then whilst that is drying nicely, we can do our sentiment to go on the top of the telephone box as well. I do really love just having the stamped sentiment, which I used on my three-dimensional one, but you also get options for doing the die cut ones as well with different words in, so I thought it's quite nice to show you that for one of these too. So we'll leave that to dry nicely. Then we've got this piece here. I think you do get a rectangle that you, yes, because I've cut out the stamped one, you could cut that out with the rectangle if you wanted to, but I just felt like I quite like using my scissors to cut along the edge of things like this, so I just thought that would be the easiest way for me to do it. But you can do this however you want to, and you can also switch it out for a stamped sentiment as well, depending what sentiment you want, or if you just wanted it to say telephone. I think you have the die and the stamp to do the word telephone, to make it look like a proper telephone box as well. So I just want to trim that out with my scissors and then add a little bit of glue to the back of it and stick it onto a piece of the black glitter card so it matches with the inside of the telephone box. I really need to get myself some more of that black glitter card. I've only got half a sheet left in my stash. I didn't realise I used it so much, but apparently I do. So I think it's a really lovely one to have in your stash. And you get a full A4 sheet of it in the kit. And if you're just using it for little accents and stuff, it's going to go a nice long way. And I'm just trimming right up to the edge on this one. So right up to the edge of the white die cut there, to trim it into a just to say little banner. And then I'm going to stick this onto a piece of the red mirror card. And I will trim around this with a little border. So it kind of helps it stand out a little bit and makes it look a little bit different. Because I've used glitter card around the window and glitter card for the backing of the crown, I thought like a little bit of the mirror card on this one would look really nice. So trim around with a little border. And there we go. So that is going to go on the top of our telephone box, and then I'm going to put the crown on there as well. And on my three-dimensional one, I did also cut this little semicircular piece as well to go on the top there, so you've also got that little bit that you can put on here too. And for this, I think I'm going to use a bit of that 1mm for the sentiment as well. And a little bit more on there, and then I think I'll stick the crown straight down. So if you use a bit of wet glue for the crown, you can place that where you think is the right position. Don't press it down yet. Get your backing off of your sentiment, make sure you like where the crown is in relation to your sentiment, and then you can press it all into position. Okay, so now we've got our finished telephone box that opens up. You've got the beautiful glitter card inside there, which could definitely be a photograph if you'd rather, or it could be maybe a poem about London. It could be a lovely sentiment that you've written, a poem you've written yourself maybe. It could be you writing out a memory of a trip to London as well. I think only London has red telephone boxes. They might be around the rest of the world as well. I don't think there are any that actually work anymore. But if you are a fan of telephone boxes, you probably know about all of the ones that are outside Wilkinson's in Kingston. You could even have a go at creating all of the pushed over telephone boxes as well. It would be a very big project if you did it in three-dimensional ones, but you could do something with two-dimensional ones and just have, you know, the first one is standing. I'm not sure if it's still usable. I think you can go inside it, and then all of the other ones are sort of leant up against it. But you could recreate that as well. I think that would be a cool way of using this kit. So first of all, we've got to decide where do we want this on our card and which way round do we want the background. So I did do this more towards the left hand side on this card, but do I like it towards the left or the middle? You can kind of put it wherever you want to. I think I like it on the middle on this one. I also think for those of us who are Doctor Who fans, you could turn this into a TARDIS as well. I know the panelling's not quite correct for a TARDIS and you would have to play around and create your own top piece, but you could definitely use it as the basis of a TARDIS, and definitely for creating a three-dimensional TARDIS as well. So any Doctor Who fans, that would be fantastic for that. So now we've got all of this done, we can take off that 3D foam from there. Then I'm going to use a bunch more on the back of it to stick this down onto the card as well. I just feel like a tiny bit of dimension will sort of lift it nicely. And we can just put a bit more down this side, a little bit more, and a teeny bit more across the bottom there. Then we can just position this onto the card, and if you have used the word telephone at the top of it, you could then either add a sentiment inside the door, and you have to open the door to see what the sentiment says on the card. You could just put the sentiment inside your card, or you could add a sentiment somewhere else on the card as well. You could have it poking out to the side, you know, being sort of a sideways sentiment, whether it is one of the ones that's, you know, all the letters are stacked on top of each other so you can still read it, or whether you just stamp it as a landscape sentiment but have it coming down the side. You could put a little circle on there with a sentiment, all sorts of different ways of adding a sentiment to it if you have used the word telephone up there and you still want to add a sentiment. But all we've got to do now is stick this to our card blank, and then we will have our finished card of turning the three-dimensional telephone box or telephone treat box from kit number 64 of the Tonic Craft Kit. We will have turned it into a two-dimensional telephone box for a card, which I think is just so lovely, because I think maybe you can have bought old telephone boxes, because a lady near where I used to live has one in her back garden. So I feel like it's something that maybe you could have bought, or maybe, I don't know, just random ones that are left around and stuff. It might be a quirky kind of card to give to somebody, maybe even somebody who works at like Talk or EE or, you know, something like that. I know, you know, telephone boxes don't really make you think of those places anymore, more like mobile phones would, but it could be a funny kind of card to give somebody who works in telephones and stuff. So yeah, but really hope you enjoyed this tutorial, mostly showing you the background of how to create a cool background using your ink blending foam, your Glacier paste and your Nuvo drops, whether it's directly from the bottle or with a fine tip nozzle on there as well, and then kind of how to turn that three-dimensional telephone box into a 2D one that the door opens the opposite way as well. So really hope you've enjoyed this tutorial video. Don't forget to watch the unboxing video for full details of everything that's in the kit, the dies that you need to create the telephone box and another card as well that I've done too. But thank you so much for watching, and I will see you again in the next video.